Thank you for your time tonight. Robert Streifer. Let me begin by noting that I don't speak today as a representative of the university in any way, although I'm a faculty member there. Today I speak to you as a PhD bioethicist with familiarity with the research under discussion and also with the large and well-developed literature on the ethics of animal research that exists. From an ethics perspective, and I want to speak today particularly to the point of the ethics of the research under discussion. From an ethics perspective, there are several overarching questions that need to be answered when one is evaluating the use of animals in research. First are two questions about the benefits of the research. How significant are the expected benefits and how likely are they to occur? Second is a question about the harms of the research. How bad is the research for the animals involved? How much will they be harmed, either physically or psychologically? Will they suffer? And if so, for how long and how intensely? And finally is a question about the independent moral importance of the animals and how that compares to the kind of moral importance that human beings have who are the intended beneficiaries. At one extreme is the view that animals are so morally unimportant that any research use of them, no matter how much harm they suffer, is justified if it can be reasonably expected to lead to some benefits to humans. At another extreme is the view that animals are so important that no harmful research of animals is justified, no matter how large the benefits to humans. I find myself in between these extreme views, as I expect most people do. Deciding on the morally acceptable trade-off between the harm to the animals and the benefits to the humans, then, requires deciding how their moral importance compares to ours. Some animals, I think, have no independent moral importance whatsoever. Sponges and fruit flies, for example, in my book, don't make the cut. Other examples, such as great apes or dolphins, have something that's very close to the same moral status as we do, although I still think it's somewhat less. Where do monkeys fit into this scale? Well, I think that they're much closer to the end with great apes and dolphins than they are to the fruit fly and the sponge. We should take the harms that we do to them very seriously, and the greater the harm, the more seriously we need to take it. This means that in order to justify causing them to suffer a great deal, we need an especially large benefit, and we need to be relatively certain that that benefit will obtain. This is the standard by which I evaluate this kind of research, and it's something that much of the research that UW does, it's a standard that much of that research meets. In this case, however, I think the research does not meet that standard, and that explains why I have been opposed to this research. This study, by taking baby monkeys away from their mothers at birth, subjecting them to numerous tests that will cause fear and anxiety, and finally killing them, is indisputably going to cause them a great deal of harm and a great deal of psychological suffering. We already know that this kind of rearing for monkeys without their moms negatively affects serotonin levels in the animals' brains, which affects how happy or sad they are, and that it causes a tremendous amount of anxiety. Indeed, of course, the protocol is designed to study the effects of early adversity. We also know that this anxiety can reach a point where finally, in a disturbingly large number of cases, monkeys that have been raised without their mothers engage in what is referred to as self-injurious behavior, and this is widely reported in the peer-reviewed literature. Gene Sackett, who is currently a professor at the Washington National Primate Research Center, and who is a primate researcher himself, and who is a postdoc under Harry Harlow, who was a pioneer of this rearing technique here at UW, has been quoted as saying that Harry, referring to Harry Harlow, discovered that if you rear two infants together, it's almost as bad as total isolation. Nobody in their right mind who knew Harry Harlow's work would raise rhesus babies in pairs. And indeed, I note that the PI of this research in question has himself said that total social isolation would not be acceptable to do with rhesus macaques. So the effects, the psychological effects of this kind of research are, although undoubtedly not identical to, they are, though, very similar to the kind of effects that humans would experience. And indeed, that's part of the reason why these are often selected as models to be used in this kind of research. Although I hope that this research, assuming it does continue, will produce new information that will contribute to our helping the many people who suffer from anxiety or depression, I nonetheless don't think that this amount of suffering and this intensity of suffering is ethically justified by that speculative hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much.